I think that we are all tapped by the universe when it's time for us to change direction or pivot or do something different when our life isn't working.
You're listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. And now without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
Hey there, No Labels, No Limits podcast listeners. Welcome back to another week of the No Labels, No Limits podcast show, where we are on a mission to help individuals, teams, and organizations, and particularly our nonprofit friends, think outside the box, move beyond limiting beliefs, and create a profound impact in their own lives and the lives of those they serve. And we do this by sharing accomplished and inspiring guests who have challenged their own limiting labels and beliefs, found new aspects of themselves that they may not have known existed, and then gone on to accomplish personal and professional goals and improve the lives of others around them. And so today, well, I'm always thrilled to have our guest, but today our guest, Alejandra Brady, is special to me because she has an interesting blend of the work that she does. So let me give you a little bit about her. She's a visionary, and her work intertwines the art of Feng Shui with modern living. But in addition to that, being a certified Feng Shui consultant, she's also the best-selling author of an intriguing book, I Just Can't Make This Shit Up. So her unique approach to life combines spiritual depth with practical environmental adjustments, and that enables people worldwide to enhance the energy of their living spaces. Alejandra's journey is deeply rooted in a spiritual quest that challenges and fulfills her. And beyond her professional prowess, you might be surprised to learn that she has mediumship capabilities, allowing her to connect with energies beyond the visible, which I'm particularly interested in. Before we hit record, we were chatting about some of those energies and how we're affected by them. Today, Alejandra is here to share how living in our true purpose can transform everyday life and why a balanced environment is crucial for this journey. So I have a bunch of questions for Alejandra. And as you know, typically we'll start in one place and we'll just see where the conversation takes us. So Alejandra, let me formally welcome you to the No Labels, No Limits podcast.
Sarah, thank you so much. And can I have you write that up for me? That's better than any PR team I've ever worked with.
I'd be happy to send it to you.
That was beautiful. I'm so grateful. Wow.
Well, I get to pick the stuff that resonates with me. You know, you have so much background and so much information about you. And I thought, yeah, but what do I want to know about? Because I have the privilege of getting to ask you questions. So, and I know
I will take a copy of that.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
And I will. Let me make a note or I'll forget it. So, but here's something that has always been of interest to me. And, you know, I've gotten older and been more forthright about it. But even when I was young, like my mom was reading Edgar Cayce and different things, and we didn't really talk about it much, but I knew there was something more, but I just didn't know what. And I have had a couple of experiences, but nothing like you described. So let's start, though, here, if you will, about how your medical condition, you know, your cervical compression, feeling something was wrong, how that led you to your own transformation and where you are today, your reboot, if you will.
Absolutely. I think that we are all tapped by the universe when it's time for us to change direction or pivot or do something different when our life isn't working. And I speak for myself here. I am one of those that needed to be hit hard, literally over the head, in order to get me to stop. Now that I look back on that journey that started at 50, and I'm going to be 57 next month, so it's been a minute.
Just a baby.
Just a baby, but hey, still kicking. You know, I, at 47, had to have a full hysterectomy with a bladder surgery that went really wrong. And so I had to learn to catheterize myself for 6 months. So that should have stopped me, right? And got me to slow down. It didn't. I had to have another reconstructive bladder surgery to fix the one that went wrong. Got right back up. 3 months after that, I had to have lower spinal fusion, which was my first fusion in my lower lumbar area. Got right back up after that. So I'm finally recuperating. All this happened at 47. I'm finally recuperating at 50. And I turned 50 in September. in October, I started dropping things, and like just things would fall out of my hands, and I'd be like handing my husband something would just fall. And that used to happen when I was pregnant. It happens to all pregnant women. You're holding something and you drop it, but I'm like, this shouldn't be happening. And I know I'm not pregnant because I had a hysterectomy, so that's not possible, So I had to go back and see my surgeon. I went to go see my spine surgeon, and he basically told me it's not a thing that you have to do today or tomorrow, but basically your spine, your cervical spine, which there was never anything wrong with my cervical spine, is compressed to a point where if you fall, you slip, you trip, whatever, you could end up paralyzed. So we're going to have to do the cervical fusion way sooner versus later. Like, you maybe have a month to get your act together because you're going to have to take off a lot of time. And when you have a cervical fusion, you get put into a neck brace that keeps your head straight forward like this. So like, I can't even look at you in the computer when I get into it. So it's not like I could sit there and work on the computer afterwards. I couldn't drive. I couldn't work, drive, read books. Basically, I was going to recover in our bedroom and watch TV and relax. And I had not done that in years, So I was forced to stop. Very much against my will. So I am an interior designer, and I've been doing that for over 20 years. And I was working with a wonderful client who at the time was really much more spiritually and energetically in tune than I was. And she suggested a Feng Shui practitioner. She was having her come to her house, and she said, you should have her come to your house and maybe she can give you some tips on how to best recover after this surgery. And something in me just said to say yes. And I honestly didn't even really know what Feng Shui was, to be honest. I just said, okay. And I think that's the first thing, right? Is being curious and being open when things are brought to you that may be outside your comfort zone, but somehow it resonates and you don't really know why. So the Feng Shui practitioner came to my house. Unbeknownst to me, I knew nothing. I just said yes to my friend, and we both booked her. And I went to her house and took notes for her. And then she came to my house to listen in, because we're going to help each other get the stuff done. And 10 minutes into our conversation, the Feng Shui practitioner told me, you're going to be doing this. And I remember so clearly saying, no, I have no interest in this, none at all. Just tell me what I need to do. Complete tunnel vision for the surgery and recovery. And I just, you can't tell me to add one more thing to my plate. I don't want to do this at all. I just want to do it to get better. So she left. I implemented what she suggested. I had a flawless and very quick recovery because I changed the energy in our master bedroom so much that it was very noticeable to both my husband and I. And we've been married 34 years now, so probably 27, 26 years at that time. And after I started the recovery, then I said I want to keep going, because when she did a full consultation at my house, just like when I do a full consultation, we go through the entire house. And then it's up to the client to take it in as many steps as they need to or want to. I only had time and focus to deal with the bedroom, before the surgery. So then as I felt better, I started doing the rest of the house. So I was my own guinea pig first. By the time we got to the end of our home, my husband and I were like, oh my God, what a difference. Like, what a shift in the energy, in our relationship, in things that were happening. Money was flowing better. Our relationship seemed lighter. The house seemed lighter. And I call Feng Shui my gateway drug. So I reached back out to her and I said, hey, remember you said I'd be doing this? Like, do you offer a certification, or do you know where to go for certification? I think I want to do this with my interior design. And fortunately for me, she did. She has her own school. So I didn't open up my practice. I studied for her under a year until I became certified, and then incorporated it with my interior design. But as I was doing that, I started becoming, I think because the energy was different in our house, I started becoming curious about other spiritual modalities. So I decided to try meditation. And it was during one of my first meditations that I truly asked what my purpose was at this time. Our son had graduated from college. He's living his best life in Chicago at that point. We're true empty nesters. I'd closed my design business. I was thinking about doing Feng Shui. I'm recovering from massive surgery. I was a little bit kind of ungrounded, not knowing where I was going and what I was supposed to. I turned 50. That's always a big deal for people. I didn't know where I was supposed to be going. So I very truly asked one day, what is my purpose? And that is when a voice came through and said, you're going to write a book. And just like I told Karen, my teacher, I said, no, thank you. I have no interest in doing that. It's like, no, never wanted to write a book. A book means you have to talk to people. A book means you have to promote it. No, just no, and here we are. Obviously they won.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to be hit with a bigger hammer by the universe, right?
It took a minute. It took a week of my straight meditating, asking the same question every day and getting told the same answer every day till I finally surrendered. And then I just said, all right, what am I supposed to write a book about? And I got told to just start writing down what was happening. Like, just take it in baby steps. I didn't have to come up with this whole concept immediately. Just start writing things that were happening. So some days it was like, absolutely nothing happened today. This is bullshit. Other days I had 3 pages of stuff to write. So it was different all the time. But in the end, it became the bestseller and award winner that it is. And I still am kind of blown away by it, but it's resonated with people all over the world. And
I'm going to back you up a little bit because you've dumped so much great information.
I know.
No, I love it, but I don't want to forget. There's a couple of questions I have for you.
Go for it.
And one is specifically when you made your initial changes in your bedroom, what were they? Because I can hear my question as I'm thinking, wow, that's a profound change. So what did you do? Just dump everything? I mean, like, give us and our listeners
So, yes. So this particular story for me needed to happen this way. A lot of times when I work with people in their primary bedrooms, we don't need to make as drastic a change as I had to make in mine. Mine comes from a backstory. In 2000, we IPO'd with a company. My husband is an entrepreneur. So sometimes things are amazing. Sometimes things are not. But in the 2000s, everything was golden and, you could buy a Jag with what you made in one day and that kind of crazy lifestyle. We were early 30s. So we bought our dream house and it was massive. It was almost 7,000 square feet. And I took it to the studs. And I bought all this furniture for it, top of the line, went to North Carolina, went to all the markets, just bought everything honestly, as expensive as I could possibly find it, which is crazy, but it's what I did at the time. And then the tech bubble crashed. And with it, so did a lot of the investments that we had. And my husband had the very unfortunate job of having to come and tell me that it was best, even though we paid cash for the house, it was best for us to not move into it. And we were going to stay in the house that we were at. And so I had an entire house full of super expensive, much bigger furniture because all the rooms in that house were much bigger than the house that we were currently in. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do with all this stuff? So we took that bedroom that was for a bedroom twice as big and shoved it into the bedroom we had. And I lived with that for 18 years. And every day when I walked in, subconsciously at some point, right? Because you can only stay mad for so long at the situation. But subconsciously, that bedroom furniture reflected everything I didn't get that I thought was my end all be all. And the furniture was, and I'm a designer. I knew it. The furniture was not to scale for our bedroom. It was way oversized, but it had been, we fall into that trap that so many of my clients fall into. But it was so expensive, I can't get rid of it. So for this, she walked in and she said the same thing I knew. I knew she was going to say it. She goes, this furniture doesn't fit this room. I'm like, well aware, and so I finally just went to my husband and I go, we've got to get rid of it. Like, I'm sorry. I know how much it cost. It was 18 years ago. We both have to get over this and get rid of it. And I'm not going to spend that kind of money to replace it, and you don't have to. Unfortunately, there's so many more furniture choices out there now. So in my case, yes, I got rid of everything and started over and was able to buy things that were much more appropriate for the scale of the room and that felt much better and much lighter for us. But it's not always that dramatic. And that's why, unless I'm asked, I don't really dive into that too much because then it scares people to have a consultation because they're like, she's going to make me come in and get rid of everything and I can't afford to do that. And it's like, that's not always the case. I'm dealing with health issue after health issue. So there's obviously something happening in there that needs to be addressed, right? So for me, it was that drastic. And for me, it did make that big a change, but we didn't do that throughout the rest of the house. We just tweaked other things.
Yeah. And what's interesting about what you said, though, is that it's that subliminal awareness that we have. Like, it just doesn't feel right. And yet
it's not working.
Right. But we deal with it. It's like we just
Right.
go through it. It's like, or every time you reach for something in your kitchen, you're thinking, oh, I've been meaning to deal with that, right? But I'll do it later. But it still is that niggly thing in the back of your head going, this is frustrating. It
It's
doesn't fit
subconscious.
who I am or whatever.
Right. Right.
So
And there's
that,
always the story as to why you need to keep it. It was given to me. I inherited it. Guilt, right? I mean, it was too
what do
expensive.
we do with that, Alejandra? Because that is so very real. I had a gal come into my office. She wanted to clean. I said, I'm looking around going, no, I need to deal with this. And she tells me, she goes, I can help you. And I go, I'm thinking, these are books and all this stuff. She said, we're speaking Spanish, but mine's not that great. And she goes, basura, no basura. And I'm going, right. And she goes, I can help you. But I just started laughing because it was clear to her it wasn't functional to me.
Right. Right.
But I'm attached to the stuff. She is not.
Well,
right?
sometimes you
So the
need that
energy.
outside perspective, right? I literally just did a consultation at this beautiful home, and I am in love with these two new clients from 2 or 3 days ago. I just did it this week. And I walked in, and she's very knowledgeable in art. She has really beautiful art pieces. And we were kind of shifting some things around and talking about energy. And I pointed to this one little picture that it seemed off scale to me. And I'm just like, well, why don't we just take that picture, which was like in the wealth kind of family area of her home, and let's move it over here because it'll look better like as part of a collage. And then she said her instinctual, no, that's the house I grew up in, and all it reminds me of is my parents' divorce. And then I go, okay, well then why do you have it up? Oh, well, I really like it. It's a really famous photographer who took the picture. I go, wait, so which is it? You don't want to put it with all your family pictures because all it reminds you of is your parents' divorce, but you really like it because a very famous photographer took it. So which one, where are we on this? And she's like, oh my God, I never thought of that. I'm like, so here's what I want you to do. Take it down, put it in the garage in the maybe pile, no es basura, no es basura.
Right.
It's like,
in the middle.
Put it in the maybe pile, put it in the garage for a month. If you don't think about it and you forget that it's there, then it's time to let it go. I don't care who took the picture. Or save it for your children. She goes, no, my children never even went to that house. This happened when I was a kid. So that's going to be meaningless to your kids. Yeah. You're saying it subconsciously brings up bad memories for you, and the only reason you have it is because someone famous took this picture. Like, that's not a reason to keep something.
So, Alejandra, how often, to me, I can see how often that replicates in our lives, my life, my friends' lives and stuff. We hold on to things either because we think we have to or we should, or from inertia. But like that whole concept of having, like, you have something done in your house because you have to do a repair and they say, you've got to get stuff out of this room, right? You can't quibble. It's got to go somewhere, right?
Right.
And then when you bring it back, you look at where you've stored it in the box, you go, let's leave it for now, right? But it's that whole thing, like, I haven't missed it. I haven't missed it in 6 months. And honestly, some of the stuff I haven't missed in a year. So what's the attachment? So why do we do that, I guess, is my deep question for you. How do we break that?
So I think, and from what I have studied and learned, a lot of it comes through our generational upbringing. So for a lot of us, our parents lived, or grandparents, right? So there's lineages. Grandparents' parents lived through world wars, lived through depressions, and they lived through times where you kept every little piece of string or wire because you may need it for something and you might be able to use it. So they have a scarcity mentality, and that gets passed down the way that we all grew up. I think, like, for my son, he's almost 30, our son, I don't feel that he has that. He doesn't have that need to hold on to everything that I was raised with, that my mother, when my mom and dad passed and I went through their house, I was in utter disbelief at the hoarding that had taken place that I wasn't aware of because I'd moved out, decades before. But half-used bars of soap were like all saved. And like, to what end? And part of it, I do think, is a mental thing for some people. And part of it is just well, what if I need it? But if you're always saying, well, what if I need it? Then you are coming from a place of lack and a place of scarcity. And it's very hard for the universe to bring in new opportunities and new things to you if you're never willing to let go. I love to use this as an example. My teacher used it with me. If your hands are full and somebody is literally trying to hand you $1 million, the keys to a new car, whatever thing you are hoping and wishing for, and it's different for everyone. For me, it would be plane tickets to someplace fabulous, right? But whatever it is, that would be what you most want. If my hands are full, how am I going to take it? Like, there's no way for it to come to me.
You can't receive.
You can't. It's impossible to. So I work with people and I help them let go. That is what my teacher did for me. That is what Karen did when she came to my house. She walked around and she was dead on. She's like, this doesn't look like you. Nope, it belonged to my parents. This doesn't look like you. Nope, I got it because I had to keep it because I bought it for another house. So she was dead on. And that is what I'm able to do with other people. And sometimes all you need is that other person to help you say basura or no basura. You know, that's really what it comes down to.
And it's so blunt. You just go, well,
yeah.
You've known me for hardly any time at all, and you've already got me sized up.
Yeah, well, it's because it's an objective viewpoint, right? And sometimes you need that objective viewpoint to make you almost like snap out of it. Like with my client the other day, and she's like, oh my God. Like, it was such an aha moment for her. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Like, if nothing else happened on this consultation, let's get rid of something that you see all day, every day, that subconsciously is bringing back very sad memories for you of a parent's divorce. Even if a famous guy took it, who cares who took the picture? You know?
So that's talking about our physical spaces and how they influence.
Sure.
That ties very directly to the energy and mediumship work you do, right?
Well, the mediumship work I don't do as work. Mediumship is a gift that I have, but I don't do like readings and stuff with people. I use it to talk to your home. I work through the
right, but that comes through you, right? And how you're doing.
Yes, I mean, it comes through me in that the house is able to tell me what's going on. You know, between my Feng Shui training, I'm also a certified biophilic designer. Obviously, the years of interior design experience. So all of them together kind of help me talk to your home, and your home is able to tell me what's going on. And usually what's going on in your house is going on with you, and vice versa, because they're very intertwined, because we spend so much time in our homes and they're such an integral part of who we are and how we, you know, when someone comes into your home, it should reflect who you are. You know, when that disconnect isn't there, just like Karen was able to see when she walked into my house, she's like, I'm seeing you and I'm seeing this, and these two things are not connecting for me, you know? And so why is that? So I'm able to pick up on that energy, you know, but I don't, unless I get a very strong, and sometimes it happens where I'm getting pounded in the head, like that I need to say something to someone. Then I will ask, are you open to receive a message? You know, and I can sort of gauge if somebody will be open or not. And then if they are, I will share it. But I usually use my abilities more so in working with their space and their energy, and to help them and the people in their space.
Were you resistant when you started noticing that ability in yourself?
It started when I was 16. So I don't even think that I knew to be resistant. What I didn't know was that it wasn't something everybody had. I kind of thought everybody could see people who passed away, and it was not talked about in our home. I was raised Catholic, and I was raised Latin Catholic, Mexican Catholic. So it just wasn't ever a conversation. My mom knew it happened because I had instances that I talked to her about it, but it was kind of like the conversation happened about the exact incident, but then we never discussed like, well, why is that? Or like, it just wasn't a conversation. And certainly, you know, past lives and all of that kind of stuff were just not conversations that I grew up with. So when I started understanding that I had a lot of gifts and the clairvoyance and the clairaudience and clairsentience, you know, yes, I was a little bit resistant because it was scary. I didn't have the terminology and the vocabulary to even understand what was happening to me. So that was scary too. But I was very fortunate to find really, really talented of the light healers to work with who guided me, who taught me how to protect myself, how to ground myself, how to set office hours, because it was getting to the point where I was being chit-chatted. It was like, oh, they got so excited that somebody new could see them that it was like chit-chatting all night long. And I'm like, I need sleep, you know, and this is not working. So I had to learn how to establish boundaries and do all that stuff. And now I love it. I love, love, love having these gifts. I love that I feel protected and surrounded by spirit guides, my parents, my husband's parents, deceased ancestors, angels, archangels, God, universe, source, whatever terminology works for you. I feel, I just always feel like there's a team behind my back. And that is just how I choose to live now. And I'm very open about it now, clearly. But no, not always, because people did not react well when I started sharing.
I'm sure they didn't. But you are lucky that, that you found folks who supported you in that and acknowledged that in you instead of trying to push it down.
Right.
It's also interesting, though, coming from your lineage. I was waiting to see if your mom said, "Oh yeah, I've been meaning to tell you about our family and the women in our family."
Well, so I'm adopted. So here's the glitch. I'm adopted. I did find out when I started becoming more open. The person I call my uncle, he just passed recently, but so he was my mom's brother. So my mom and dad who raised me are who I call my mom and dad. So, but they're adoptive parents. My uncle said my grandmother, their mom, had all these abilities. And so, I just got chills. So good, they're around.
She's listening.
Yes, I love it. And so I did find out that my adoptive grandmother, who I spent an enormous amount of time with, had a lot of these gifts. So I think she probably did, as a young child, convey things to me that maybe I forgot or just didn't piece together. But at 40, my biological mother and her family found me. So that's a whole nother part of the book, because that does play very heavily into it. They are bloodline gifts. My biological mother has them. My biological half sister has them. When they came in for me, they came in of the light. And I said, I won't accept anything that isn't of the light. And that is all I will work in. I will never work in any darkness. Unfortunately for my mother, when hers came in, that she became aware of them, they came in dark. They scared her. And she said, no, I don't want them. And thank goodness we all have free will, right? We can accept them or not accept them. So they are blood, and our son has them, and he knows it. And he's like, I'm just not ready to deal with this yet. And I'm like, and that's fine. You don't have to, or you can work with it through your business, just like I choose to do it through mine. No one's asking you to go be a medium, but you can walk into a room and intuitively know what's going on. And isn't that going to be an advantage for you? So you can choose how you work with it. But yes, it is a bloodline. So when I shared with my biological mother that this was happening, then I found out, yes, indeed, it had happened to her too, and how it happened to her. And I do totally get it. Her situation was not one I would want. So I would have probably said no if mine came in like hers too.
Well, things happen at the perfect timing. So right. you got to say yes at a time that worked for you.
Yes.
But so let's go back to your book, because you've referenced it. I referenced it in the beginning. And you talked about like you didn't want to write it. And then here it turns out to be a powerful book, best-selling. Give us an overview of the book. Who, I know you were told to write it, but who the readership should be, or you expect is, or what you've heard from it.
So what I've heard from it, and my intention with putting it forth, was for it to be a guide and maybe just like a comfort for people who are going through their spiritual journeys. This is not for the master who is so enlightened and, all of that. They've been there, done it. This is for the people who are currently going through what I went through at 50, who felt very alone. I had all of one person that I could talk to very openly about all of this as it was unfolding. And I would have loved to have had this book to not feel so alone on my journey, and to understand that, no, I wasn't actually going crazy, that they were just gifts that were opening up. And how do I use them? And what am I supposed to do with them? And at the beginning, again, it's very scary when you are just first opening and everybody's getting super excited on the other side. Like, you are getting bombarded, and it's very overwhelming, And so I was fortunate. I put the list of all the healers that I worked with in the back of the book, because I also wanted it to be a resource for other people. Like, I got all their permission. So anytime that I'm talking about an experience with a certain healer, I reference their real name and how you can get a hold of them, because if that resonates with the reader, then they can go reach out and work with them too. So I wanted it to be very much of like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. Other people are going through this too. This is happening to others. Because I really did feel so alone. A very long story short, I went from my very first past life regression, which is one of my favorite things to do. And I came home, and the gist of the whole 3.5 hours there was for me to use my voice. Now I'm fused here, which I find quite ironic. Use your voice that's completely fused. I have a plate holding me up, and share my story. And this was at the very beginning. So I wasn't, I was scribbling in the book, but it wasn't a book. It was just a whole bunch of notes. And I came home, and my husband was waiting for me, and he had poured himself a beer. He poured me a glass of champagne, and he's like, so tell me about it. And, I started telling him about it. And at the end of it, he literally looked at me and he goes, okay, but you're not going to tell anybody this, right? Because they're going to think you're crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, I just got told to use my voice. And, the person who's been the love of my life since I was 18 years old, the first thing they say, out of concern, right? But they're like, you're not going to share this. So that's what I was facing, every direction. Not necessarily everyone calling me evil, although some people did. But just that concern that, oh, people are going to think you're crazy. You can't talk about this, so having someone else go through it and reading how I navigated will hopefully be of service to other people going through it. And that's the feedback I've gotten from all over the world. I get DMs from people everywhere, and they're all saying this really resonated. Thank you so much. Like, it spoke to me. We're kindred spirits, so I'm very grateful that it is. And it's not for everyone, and I don't want it to be, but for the people that it is, they find it and it resonates, and that's all I can ask for.
No, I do believe that people find what they're looking for when they look, but if there's nothing out there for them to find, right? So thank God you used your voice.
Right?
Or I wouldn't get to meet you.
Right,
Listeners wouldn't get to meet. But that is kind of the people who love us and want to protect us. And honestly, they want to protect themselves. They don't want to think, when you're married to that wacko.
You're married to a witch.
Right. So, but I've learned to say, when people say, you're kind of weird, I'm thinking, thanks.
Yep. Thank you. That means I'm not ordinary and like everybody else.
I don't know if I'm weird. I just know I'm me,
right.
And I'm okay with that now. But, you get that also from decades of living where you're going, I'm just not going to worry about that right now,
Right.
But thank goodness. And how great to come home from a new experience and be presented with a glass of champagne and ask the question, what happened? I was going to ask, it was hard to express what happened, because that sometimes can be so profound in interaction like that it's sometimes hard to have like you're in it, but to have the words to say it, if you ever.
Yes, I found out that for me, it was very helpful, especially because I was being told, and guided to write all these things down. I would come home, and as soon as I finished talking to him, I went and just typed it all out, because otherwise, you forget along the way, and you forget important details. And that's one of the things that people always say about the book. They're like, it's so specific. I'm like, yeah, because as soon as something happened, I'd sit down and type it or write it if I had a journal with me or whatever, because I knew I was going to forget. There's no way I can remember everything that happened. So I just tried to do it. I've had a few experiences that are more challenging, but thankfully I've been given the words, to get it down on paper. And then once I do that, then sometimes I do until I read it again. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. Because,
life goes on.
And it is a lot, especially at the beginning. It's just a lot to take in, a lot of information, understanding what words mean and what they are, and what is someone who's clairvoyant, what is clairsentience, like what are these things, and how do they work, and why me, and just so many questions.
So what should I have asked you that I didn't? I feel I should ask you this particular question, not out of laziness, but that there's something on your mind that I should be asking you, or that's come up for you in our conversation that you're going, oh yeah, we should dig into one area more before we start wrapping.
Oh goodness. We kind of talked about it a little bit before, like what would I want to share? I think I'd want to share with your audience that it's never too late. I think that's a really big one. Like, it doesn't matter how old you are. Your spiritual journey can happen at 10, at 50, at 70. I don't think it's too late. I think if this conversation resonated with you, and you start having questions, then sit down in a quiet space. You don't need to know how to meditate. Sit down in prayer, meditation, just quiet, whatever that means for you, whatever stillness means for you, and ask what your purpose is, and then be willing to get the answer. You can have a fight with them like I did and say no, but eventually if it is your purpose and you want to follow through with it, then you just need to take that inspired action too, right? A lot of us want to just have things happen, but they're also looking for us to take the inspired action on our side to help ourselves and to help others. And I do think we're all here to serve. I do think we all have gifts. I've been asked that question many times. Do you think everyone has gifts, or are you just one of the few? I'm like, no, I think every single person on the planet right now has a gift. It's up to you whether or not you choose to use it. It may be a lifetime in which it's not going to be open to you, but maybe if you start asking questions, you might see what it could be and see if it's different. And I just think life is so much better now with it all. I really do. I love my life. I love to wake up in the morning and say, what's going to happen today? Anyone going to talk to me today? Like, where are we going to go? And just, it's really fun. What are they going to send me? They send me dimes. They send me feathers. All sorts of fun stuff happens in my life now.
Because you're aware.
Right. And I look for it. I think
right.
That's the thing too.
You expect it.
Spirit guides love to bring you presents and little reminders and little everything, but you have to say, hey, like my father-in-law who's passed leaves us dimes in the most random. I was literally walking down a hill in Aspen on Father's Day weekend. I walked into an elevator that day and I found a dime, like as soon as I stepped on it. Then we're walking down the hill in grass that's about, a foot high. And I see something and I reach down and it's 16 quarters on June 16th, which is my father's birthday, which is Father's Day. And I'm just like, oh, hello. Again, I can't make this shit up. It's like, but who else is going to find a pile of quarters walking down a mountainside in Aspen?
Well, how playful is that?
They love it. And I love it. So I think that's why, we encourage each other. And now my husband will take the dogs out for a walk and he'll come home and he goes, I found you a feather. I'm like, well,
Sonny? So he clearly got over his
oh yeah. Yeah. No, he has no choice at this point, right? Because I'm moving ahead. I didn't let anybody read the book except for my editors until it was done, because I didn't want any voices in my head. Yep. And I didn't want anyone to say, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. So the book is strictly what I feel needs to be in there. And my editors felt needed to be in there. And then I let everyone read it at the same time. And I'm like, it's out there now. Sorry, hon. The good, bad, and the ugly.
But in the coaching world, that is such an important thing to remind people that there are people who love and care about us, but we don't necessarily need to share everything with them until it's ready, right? Like, you have to find people who aren't going to be impacted necessarily to help give you advice. Your editors want you to have a successful book.
Right.
Right. They're not, but they want you to share your voice, because what's the point of a book?
Right. Right. So, if you're covering up this stuff, and some people are like, you were really raw on certain things. I'm like, well, yes, because that's what happened. Or, you talk about this person and talked about them and said that they were toxic. I'm like, well, at the time they were, and now they're still one of my best friends. But at that point, that is what was happening. So I had to be really authentic and not write it from a place of being healed, but write it from how the journey was unfolding, because it wouldn't help somebody to read it if I was already talking from where I am now. It's helpful to read, I was so shocked that this person reacted to me this way when I shared this, because that's what's going to happen to everybody,
Exactly.
So you have to even, and I changed people's names. I wanted to protect people's anonymity, but obviously in Tampa itself, some people know who I'm talking about, and that's fine. But it wasn't a book about victims and villains. It's a book of, here's my journey, here's how these things happened, here's how they unfolded, and here are the lessons I learned from it.
But I think, Alejandra, those lessons, that whole thing, even people who love us or are friends can, and we can too, be toxic for other people at certain times.
Of course.
It's fair to acknowledge that. Otherwise, people just think, well, I must not be a very nice person, or why am I reacting this way? When in fact, what just happened is not a healthy thing to happen.
Right.
Right.
And one of the ones that I got questioned on is one of my closest friends now. To this day, we travel as a foursome. I've done all their homes, all their businesses. We're great. And she's read it and she knows, and that is what happened at that time. And we are now over here. So you're not going to lose everyone, but you may lose some along the way, and some may or may not come back, but then you'll also pick up other people that are more aligned with you.
Yeah.
And that's going to be how you continue to grow.
So that's a testament to bravery on your journey. If it's your journey, take your journey.
Yeah.
Trust your journey, because we all have our unique ones.
We do.
Step into them. Okay, I'm going to give you the last parting words for our listeners as we take this podcast out for this week. What do you want to leave us with?
Trust your gut. And I hope that everybody gets to experience a spiritual journey, because I think it is, other than being a mom, and having our son and raising him, I think it's the best thing I've ever done. And I think that your life changes drastically and just feels so purposeful every day. And I have so many clients come to me looking for their purpose, and it's like, I just feel stuck. I feel stagnant. I don't know what to do with myself. Ask, what is my purpose? And then follow through and know that it's going to be in your highest and greatest good. And no, it might not always be easy. It's not always rainbows and unicorns, but it will be worth it in the end. You'll make a difference. And I think that's the biggest, what else are we here for?
Hey, I can't improve on that. So I'm just going to remind you, podcast listeners, we will have all the information about Alejandra in our show notes. So go there. You can find her links. You can check her out. The book will be listed there. Check the book out, of course. And let us know what you think. You want more of Alejandra? Because I would love her to come back and talk more. So, but let me know. And come back next week for another great guest. And until then, be well, spend time writing and asking, what's my purpose?
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic business coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. Please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Till next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.